Hello and welcome to Voices of Westerly, a new podcast from the United Theater featuring conversations, many of which are recorded in front of a live audience, with the creative and professional individuals who make Westerly, Rhode Island such a unique and inspired community of leaders, innovators, and artists. I'm your host, Tony Nunes, Artistic Director of the United Theater, here in the beautiful downtown arts district of Westerly, Rhode Island. The Voices of Westerly series is inspired by Westerly photographer and artist Josh Behan, who created a Faces of Westerly portrait series, which we premiered here a couple of years ago at the United and is now on permanent display and rotation in our halls. Voices of Westerly live discussions will take place monthly in our post-credit scene event space here at the United. Our second guest of the evening is a James Beard Award winner who the New York Times has named one of the world's foremost cocktail experts. Please welcome the king of cocktails, Dale DeGroff.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, Dale.
They laughed, they cried.
Dale, I'm going to ask you the same question I start every interview on this podcast with. What is your Westerly origin story? Are you from Westerly?
My mom is. And I was born in Rhode Island, but I was born in a Navy hospital in Quonset Point because my dad was a Navy pilot. But earliest memory, most important memory that has stuck to me all these years was I was a 7-year-old visiting Grandma up on Linden Street, top of the hill up here. And I'm 76, so there were still traveling circuses when I was 7 years old. And the traveling circus was out at Dunn's Corners at a big empty field. And I cried myself to sleep because my mom and dad said it was too late in the evening for us to go to the circus. And I think as I cried myself to sleep, something must have been going on downstairs because then I get this like, Dale, wake up. And then I feel my dad pick me up. And then we're in the car. And then we're in the circus. And my pajamas. I'm at the circus. My dad must have felt so guilty of me crying myself to sleep that he said, "Oh, come on, let's take the kid to the circus."
I've had nightmares like that where I wake up in my pajamas at the circus. So you grew up in Westerly then?
No. Ironically, literally 2 months after my birth in Quonset Point, Rhode Island, which is where the Navy base was back in the day, my dad was sent off to JAG school, which is important for officers who are going to be needing to deal with legal issues, and that's what he was going to be dealing with because he was on his way to the Kwajalein Atoll in the South Pacific Marshall Chain, which is about 260 miles southwest of Bikini Island. Does Bikini Island ring a bell?
It does.
Well, in 1994, I found out why my dad was in this crazy island with the family in tow, my sister and myself. That's where I spent the first 20 months of my life. That was in the era when we were testing nuclear weapons.
Yeah. You weren't far away from that?
Well, luckily we were not downwind from it.
Yeah, for sure. So when did you find your way back here?
So then it was back to Pensacola, Florida. From Pensacola, Florida, back here for a short stay when my dad was going out on an extended cruise. Then to Indianapolis, Indiana, where he was a recruiter. Good-looking young flyboy. Try to get the other good-looking young flyboys to join the Navy and see the world. And from there, where were we? Oh, from there it was Spain. No, first Morocco, then Spain. The last 2 tours of duty that my dad had. And then back to Westerly as a senior in high school, where I finished up at Westerly High.
Oh. And did you stay here long after that?
No. I ran out of the town because it was a backwater then. They hadn't published that big New York Times article that said "Forgotten Paradise." Seriously.
That's a real article?
Yes.
About Westerly?
Yes.
Forgotten Paradise?
In the New York Times travel section. Forgotten Paradise.
I need to find this article.
You need to find it.
Wow.
Because, boy, let me tell you, local people were not real thrilled about it, except the property owners.
Forgotten Paradise.
Yeah. And so what were we talking about?
Just how you made your way back here,
Oh,
and then how
yeah.
you left.
I went to URI and got into the theater department. We did a play that was recognized by the Yale Drama Festival, and I was off like a shot in my junior year to become to walk on the Broadway boards, and I thought sure I'd be there in no time. Well, actually, at no time have I ever been on the Broadway boards. But I did find some other boards. It took me about 30 seconds to realize that life happens in the bars, the neighborhood bars, and that's where I ended up working. First as a dishwasher, and then as a waiter, and then eventually as a bartender.
So, when you started at the bar, did it immediately click with you? Because no? Okay.
I mean, I wanted to be behind the bar as a waiter because it was sexier, you know what I mean? It looked cooler, And also the money was not so bad because New York bars, being a bartender in New York bars makes some serious money. But my first bar jobs were anything but sexy. They were late night, closing at 4 a.m, stuck with nothing but a dishwasher, and I had to cook hamburgers and 10 bar, and just nightmare places where they were in singles bars where it wasn't a pleasant place to be after 2 a.m, and getting home at 7:30 and then back to work at 4 o'clock the next afternoon. Now, it wasn't that pleasing. I still thought it was pretty cool being behind the bar, but those were hard jobs,
Yeah.
And then I started this long stretch of getting lucky. I got lucky with a bar called Charlie O's in Rockefeller Center, which was created by my mentor and my boss, Joe Baum, the man who really set me on a road that brought me to where I am today. But it was a spectacular bar that I had been to as a customer because my best friend's older brother, who is also a kid that I met here in one of the times when I spent several months going to a grammar school, Immaculate Conception, and he ended up being a lifelong friend. He had his big Eugene O'Neill family, 5 brothers, 1 sister. God forbid you married the sister, And his older brother was a jazz piano player, Charlie Holland. Everybody locally here knows Charlie. He was brilliant. He just passed away at 100. His third brother, Ronnie, ran a advertising agency called Lois Holland and Callaway, which did the advertising for the man who was my mentor, who became part of a company called Restaurant Associates, which brought him to his pinnacle. So it was a web that was always going back to Westerly, this web of people that were important in my life. Charlie turned me on to jazz. Where did I go when I went to New York? I hung out in jazz clubs, because Charlie, as a teenager, I should have been listening to the Beach Boys, which I was, until I heard Charlie play with these brilliant musicians that he had the budget at the Mystic Motor Inn, which is now not as glorious as it was then. It's the one on the top of the hill. It's just as you enter into Mystic.
Yeah. I worked there for 13 years.
Well, Charlie had a pretty good, in the season, a pretty good budget to bring Harry Sweets Edison and Little Jazz Roy Eldridge and a whole bunch of real stars of the jazz world who no one has heard of now.
Yeah.
Sadly. But that got me started on that, and it got me started on lots of things in New York. So the web of Westerly has always been a big part of my life.
So when did the work behind the bar? You're known as the king of cocktails. You're kind of one of the forefathers of the craft cocktail movement. So at what point did it switch for you to go from behind the bar, not loving it, to becoming an artist behind the bar?
Well, Joe Baum.
Okay.
My mentor. But let me tell you what I was just before that, because we called it the era of that's how we make it here. Someone would walk in and they'd say, bartender, I'd like a Singapore Sling. And you'd go to your other bartender and you go, that's the one with the juices and the rums, right? Just juices and rums, man. Go for it. So you'd make something, and the guy would taste it and he'd say, bartender, I'm not tasting the gin in this Singapore Sling. That's how we make it here. So we called it the that's how we make it here era.
Yeah.
That's what I started in.
Okay.
And then I met Joe. And Joe, in my first interview, now first of all, I met Joe long before I had an interview with him, from afar. Because why? Because I was part of the family of the company that did his advertising. I worked in the mail room. It was the kind of deal where my best friend in grammar school I'm sure his mom, and I used to spend nights at his house up in Potter Hill, I'm sure his mom called Ronnie when I moved and when Jerry moved to New York and said, Ronnie, you take care of those boys when they get to New York. So he did. He gave us jobs in the mailroom and stuff like that. So I'm in the mailroom. I'm going through all the files. There wasn't a lot to do in the mailroom. And I'm seeing these old menus from the 60s, and La Fonda del Sol and the Four Seasons. And I'm pretty, I talked to Ron about it. He said, oh, well, great places, and then he took us to those great places. Places that I couldn't, that were more than my monthly rent for dinner, And so that gave me a bar, a very high bar, very young.
Yeah.
And then when I had my first interview with Joe, coming back from having worked on the West Coast in some spectacular places, the Hotel Bel Air among them, because I had 2 children in tow, I wanted to be a part of a restaurant up in San Francisco, but it was taking too much time. And I needed health insurance. I got the kids. So my friend Jerry Holland, Ron's younger brother, says, Ronnie says you should get back here. Joe Baum's opening a new restaurant on 49th Street and needs a head bartender. Zoom. And I waited it out until they're finally finishing the construction, working at a mafia joint in Brooklyn, not happy about that, and finally I have my interview with Joe, and he says he wants to have a classic cocktail program a la, he said, get a book called How to Mix Drinks by Jerry Thomas. So I go to Doubleday over on Fifth Avenue, after the interview. I asked the guy, he said, there's no such book, man. So then I go to Barnes & Noble, and I said, this book has got to exist. They seem to have trouble finding it. No, I can't find it either, man. Scribner's was still open. Scribner's had a arched window on the second floor where Hemingway's agent used to sit right in the window, I thought, these guys will know. So I go into Scribner's, get a young guy, he goes, Jerry Thomas, How to Mix Drinks. Hold on a minute. So he comes back with the old and rare catalog. He said, yeah, it's a book, but you'll never find it. It was written in 1862.
Oh, my God. Wow.
Well, I found it with the help of some friends.
Yeah.
And I did use that book and many other books to try to put together a menu of these drinks that Joe wanted, strangely, for the small fine dining French restaurant with a 3-star Michelin chef, Gerard Pangot. And I started, in the first 6 months, wondering, we haven't got the menu really. We got a couple little things on the menu, but mostly we got champagne at the front in a big bucket, and we've got wines of Burgundy because the chef liked the wines of Burgundy. And finally, I got Benny Goodman sitting at my bar, and I said to the guy who I had my first interview with, who's the wine master and the GM, Raymond Wellington, I said, Ray, what the hell is going on? I mean, Joe is sitting with all these artists, Dale Chilhooly and the architects, and now I got Benny Goodman waiting for Joe at my bar. What the hell is going on? He says, it's the Rainbow Room thing, man. I said, what Rainbow Room thing? He says, where you been? Joe's been working on it for almost a year now. He's restoring the old supper club on top of the Rainbow Room, 30 Rock. Ah, I see. I'm a lab rat. I'm a research assistant. I'm putting together a menu for something I'm not even going to do. So I went to Joe and I told him, I got a great idea for the menu that you're preparing for. And he said, what is it? I said, well, what if we were to take drinks from like the closed great supper clubs and bars of yesteryear, the Stork Club, the Colony, the Copa, and he said, yeah, good idea. Show me a menu. So I worked on it very hard for a very long time. And by virtue of that menu, I got the gig. After an interview with the GM, who was a really close friend of Joe's, and I had to get his blessing. But that's what led to the Rainbow Room, which is what led to me making these old cocktails that hadn't been on menus, some since before Prohibition, and using only fresh ingredients. We had no soda guns behind our bar. We had no mixes behind our bar. Joe wouldn't allow it. He wanted classic service. I remember passing the remark that, Joe, if you get really, really busy at the bar, maybe we should have a couple, more premium, sour mix. Oh, yeah? You think they had any premium sour mix back in 1862 when that book was written? He said, well, look, Dale, if you can't figure out how to do this, then I can find somebody. Oh, no, I got it, Joe. I got it. I didn't really have it, but I got it. It took 6 months for that menu to come together at the Rainbow Room for a lot of reasons. Manufacturing, how to order to the menu. We had 3 months of training, but these guys, none of them had ever made drinks like this before.
So if that book came out in 1862, and you had trouble finding books like that in existence. Is that what prompted you to write your book?
No, not at all. My first prompting came from some customers at the bar at the Rainbow Room after I got the gig. They worked not too far away at Dell Books, which is not one of your premier imprints, you know. And they said, you know, this is really cool what you're doing here. Nobody's ever done anything like this before. You should be making a book about this. I said, yeah, you think so? I mean, I've got all the recipes done already. Well, there you go. Just start sending some stuff to us, man. We'll stop in, you know. So, of course, Joe knows every CEO, every person in Midtown Manhattan because he's been feeding them for 30, 40 years, right? So yeah, apparently he got a call from the CEO of Dell Books. He said, hey, Joe, you know, your head bartender's doing a book with some of my people. I get the call. Get down here. 43rd floor, executive floor, you know. And he's sitting behind the desk and he says, what the hell do you think you're doing? Number one, we don't own the name Rainbow. It's owned by Rockefeller Center. We rent the joint. Number two, if anybody's going to do a book about this place, it's going to be me. Get back to work and forget all this foolishness. Fast forward 13 years. We've lost our lease for unexplained reasons that I can't go into. I have another bar. It's called Blackbird. I'm doing some of the same things. I got a literary agent named John Hodgman. He's not an agent anymore. He's an actor and a writer now. But he says, you know, this is amazing what you're doing here. You should put this in a book. I said, yeah, I've been there, done that. And he said, no, I mean it. I mean it. I work at an agency. I'm a writer's house. It's a really well-known, and I'm going to help you do this. And I said, all right, but I don't really have time. I don't want to go. I can't run around town going to publishers' offices. I said, no, I got an idea. I said, how about, you know, I'd like to tell stories. Maybe some of them could come here. And then I thought, no, they can't come here. that won't work at all. But I called my friend Waldy Maloof, who had a place called on 56th Street. It was a wood-fired restaurant. Can't remember the name of it right now. I said, Waldy, and he was our last chef at the Rainbow Room. He got a Michelin star. And I said, Waldy, can I come by between lunch and dinner sometimes and make drinks for a few people? Of course, we'll make a check. Yeah, sure. Use it anytime you want. So John set up these interviews with different publishers, and there wouldn't be one person. There'd be five. As soon as they heard it was going to be free drinks, are you kidding me? So they all show up, and I'm making the drinks, telling stories. We get 3 offers for the book. Well, I stuck to my principles and took the highest offer, of course. I didn't have a clue. And I got a lot of help from John. Writing a book was not where I thought I'd find myself when I stepped behind the bar. So I write 135,000 words after 2 years of torture, and I finally turned it in. The day after the next day that I turned it in, by messenger, back from Random House, which is now called Penguin Random House, is a terse note. This is, Dear Mr. DeGroff, we have a contracted you for one book of 75,000 words. You have delivered 2 books at 135,000 words. You have 2 weeks before which you will be in breach of contract, and they gave me a lot of money up front, which I'd spent, of course, you know. And I'm like, call my agent. I said, what's this about word count? And she said, well, didn't you read the contract? I said, no, that was your job to read the contract. And so she said, we got to find a writer for you. I said, I know just a guy, but he was a magazine writer. She said, I don't know if they're going to be happy with the magazine writer. I said, it's my ass. I'm going to hire the guy I want to work with, you know. So I hired a wonderful friend of mine who's since written several books, the first of which was a cocktail book, of course, after he worked on mine with me. And that's how the craft of the cocktail became the craft of the cocktail. But it wasn't the craft of the cocktail. It was called Tall Tales, Cocktails, My Life Behind Bars. And at the time, I was working with a PR lady from Maker's Mark Bourbon. And she said, oh, I hear you're writing a book. What's it going to be called? And I said, Tall Tales, Cocktails, My Life Behind Bars. No. So what do you mean, no? It's cool. It's funny. Tall Tales, Cocktails, My Life Behind Bars. And it gives me a little, I can throw a little lore about because Tall Tales. And she said, no, it's terrible. I know what you're doing. I know the Rainbow Room history. And I said, well, what would you call it? She said, well, I'd call it the only thing you should call it is The Craft of the Cocktail. I said, oh, man, it's so booky and boring. Really? The Craft of the Cocktail? You think that would be the title? Well, let me tell you. I don't think I'd gotten past one hardcover printing if I called it Tall Tales, Cocktails, My Life Behind Bars. But because The Craft of the Cocktail actually happened, right in the time that I was writing this book, 2000 to 2002, I went to 17 hardcover printings with that book.
I mean, I was at some random Vermont at a wedding a few weeks ago, and there behind their bar is your book. I mean, it's kind of a staple at most bars. Well,
it's kind of long in the tooth now, but the newer one, the 2020 version, the new Craft of the Cocktail, I've updated it.
Okay.
A lot of water under the bridge. A lot of things went down. A lot of talented young bartenders have come down the pike who are taking... See, Joe didn't want to have variations on classic cocktails. He wanted the classic cocktails back in 1987 when we opened, because they've been gone a long time. Give me the right recipes. Let's do it. Let's do something New Yorkers haven't seen, our audience hasn't seen in decades, And the craft movement took those classic recipes and ran with it, man. It became like the 5 basic sauces to which they were going to make thousands of sauces,
So when did you find your way back to Westerly after all that time in New York?
COVID. My mom was 90. Jill's mom was 92. She was living in Connecticut. We found a house. Well, we were looking for a house in Westerly, but we found one 4 blocks from Westerly in Pawcatuck. Ironically, a house that my grandfather had worked on. I could see it from the fireplaces because they have the same fireplaces in my grandmother's house, which he built. And I had to have it, so we offered her more than she was asking, and we got lucky and got it the very first day. We came on the market, and that's where we live. And I got to spend 2.5 years with my mom, 3.5 to 4 years with Jill's mom, before we lost them both, and in their 90s. And we should be so lucky, A lot of longevity here in Westerly. They all had gardens, all these old Italians.
Right.
They ate from the earth, It was... And I kept up the traditions. I mean, I was true to them. I still make soppressata, as you know.
Yep.
And we still do the frittatas on Easter morning, and we try to do the fish dishes on Christmas Eve, but there's not many of us left, so, once in a while we'll do it.
So you're fully acclimated back to Westerly.
I am.
Completely. You're playing bocce at the bocce club.
I'm playing bocce. How did we do last night?
We lost, but
no.
it's okay.
I couldn't play last night.
We will win eventually. It's not the point, right? So I want to end with the last 2 questions I end all of these on. The first is a simple question about Westerly. I just like to hear people's answers for this because they tend to be different. What are your 3 favorite places here in Westerly?
Napatry Point.
What is it?
Napatry Point.
Okay.
Because that's where we walk.
Beautiful.
A lot of, this time of year, almost every day. The lap pool at the Y. That's where I spend every single morning. It's my lifesaver, literally. Probably the little cottage we bought on Moss Street. Being surrounded by the woodwork that my grandfather actually did in 1927, it's really a very warming feeling, So those would be the 3 for me.
Nice. And I end all of these interviews with the same 3-part question, kind of just talking about the future and your place in the future here in Westerly. What is next for you? What would you like to see happen in this community over the next few years, and how do you hope to be a part of that?
God, what's happened in the years since I mean, my mom went to the United Theater, And I was sitting in the United Theater as a teenager, met this girl who later became my best friend's wife. I mean, so there is a lot of distance that's been traveled already. I would not have thought when we moved here right before COVID, because I hadn't been coming back here and spending that much time, that this would have become a resort destination, which is essentially what has happened to this little sleepy town.
Yeah, what did you say that New York Times headline was?
Forgotten Paradise.
Wow, forgotten no more.
No. And I'm working to become a part of it, working with Steve Corrigan, 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 to create something at the cafe next to the United Theater, which we're having a success in doing. I'm enjoying the blues club around the corner where my mother went dancing when she was. Did you know that was a dance club when they had swing bands?
Yeah.
So I'm looking to the day when I'm getting a new knee in October. Looking to the day when I'm not going to be able to jump on an airplane and run around selling my booze, which is what I'm doing for a living now. And I'll be sort of stuck here. But there's a lot worse places that you could be stuck than the little old town of Westerly, Rhode Island, where I can walk downtown from my house, and have a drink and not worry about driving home. So it's lovely. And it is my becoming part of that going forward is a good thing.
Great. Well, Dale, thank you for joining us on Voices of Westerly.
My pleasure.
Cheers.
Cheers, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the United Theater Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this episode, we encourage you to subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. And if you could take a moment to leave a review, we'd greatly appreciate it. Your feedback helps us create content that you love. So hit that subscribe button and leave us a review, and we'll see you on the next episode.